respected faculty and my young friends. I'm not very sure whether at the fag end of the day, manufacturing is a subject for discussion. All of you must be tired with more exciting discussions throughout the day. And you must be in a hurry to go home. So nevertheless, let me try to give some perspectives of whatever theme you have chosen from my experience point of view. I'm sorry I did not come with a lot of preparation, so I'll try to make it as much interactive as possible. Whatever theme you people have chosen, it's like quite relevant. But I would say that the kind of language you people have used in the brochure, the world is designed for these kinds of, especially in the present context and the days ahead. So if the world is not volatile, if the world is not uncertain, the world is not complex, then that would not be the normal one. So the new normal is what you people have aptly chosen as volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. So in fact, I would say that people would find it difficult to manage if things are more predictable, things are more clear. I would say that managing in those kinds of situations could be more complex than the one which we are destined to, which will be full of vulnerabilities, full of uncertainties, full of complexities and whatnot. And for a country like ours, we had gone through much more complex times. I'm not sure, most of you might not have been, in fact, born in 1990 when I think the P.V. Narasimha Rao government took over. Our country had just 2 weeks requirement of foreign exchange to meet the minimum 2 weeks requirement of foreign exchange for the country. In fact, the finance minister in the previous government had to pledge the gold of our country in London to ensure that we have minimum required international credit rating to see that the world allows whatever minimum imports are required, especially oil. We were very much dependent on the imports of oil. So with that kind of situation in 1990, some of the boldest economic decisions were taken. They say that it was MNC had introduced LPG. MNC, not multinational company. Manmohan Singh, Narasimha Rao, and Chidambaram. They have ushered in not liquefied petroleum gas, it was liberalization, privatization, and globalization. And nobody could even think of the kind of bold decisions this team had taken. When we were having just 2 weeks requirement of foreign exchange, this team decided that the only way to make our country sustain its economy is that we should free the imports. From a controlled economy where everything was controlled, so the imports were freed. There was no requirement of any import license required for the major imports of our country. Then they have de-licensed. Till that time, if you had to manufacture anything in our country, you had to get an industrial license to manufacture. And all kinds of vested interests used to be there. If somebody had a factory, he used to go and camp in Delhi and say, okay, allow no other person to get a license to manufacture the same goods so that another competitor is born. So they have de-licensed most of the industries. They said anybody could start any industry and manufacturing. And the third big step what they had taken was that the foreign investment was really allowed. Till that time, the socialistic thinking was that everything should be indigenous. So the fundamental thing what this team had recognized was that India requires foreign technology or better technology, let me put it that way. Better technology cannot come without some kind of return to the people who have developed these technologies. So foreign investment was freely allowed, even to extent of almost 49 to 74% in most of the key sectors. So it would have been unimaginable to think that a country which is having just 2 weeks of foreign exchange requirement could take certain bold decisions like freeing the imports, delicensing the industries, and allowing the foreign capital. Another major decision which was taken those days was that uh, the emphasis got shifted from public sector to private sector. So till 90s, government used to be in the business of setting up industries, and they used to think that this was an instrument for ensuring the equitable development throughout so they will start one industry in Tamil Nadu, another industry in Andhra Pradesh, third industry in Karnataka, these kinds of things. So government was thinking that this was the only way to ensure equitable development throughout the country. But then a realization has come that government need not be in the business of business. Business should be left best to the entrepreneurship, to the private entrepreneurs. So the shift, most of the industries, almost 70% of our investments used to be in public sector, and that ratio got changed, that almost only about 30% would be in the public sector, and 70% shifted to private sector. So we had private companies setting up power plants, refineries, petrochemicals, aviation sector. So all these bold decisions had helped our country. And of course, I'm not saying that there was some luck factor in the sense the US economy was booming, that has helped. So the birth of outsourcing, and then the service sector started booming. So all these things have, so there was no looking back. These very bold decisions from almost the brink of, so we had almost a bankrupt economy like ours. Today, India has grown to be the fourth largest economy in the world in terms of purchasing power parity. In terms of the real income, we may be around 9th or 10th in the world GDP, but if you measure it in terms of purchasing power parity, we are the fourth largest economy in the world. And the prediction is maybe by 2024-25, we could become, China is likely to beat US by 2018. China would be the largest economy. Most probably maybe India could become the second largest in the next 15, 20 years. So what I'm trying to say is that we are not new to the story of this volatility, this kind of uncertainty, this kind of complexity. We have come through much worse days. So as I mentioned today, our economy is worth almost $4 trillion, $4 trillion economy in terms of, again, purchasing power parity, fourth largest economy. And the kind of things what we have achieved is that today we are self-sufficient in our food production. We are self-sufficient in space technology. Chandrayaan, you must have heard, Mangalyaan. We are able to put our own satellites into the orbits, and we have our own nuclear technology. We are building the most advanced turbines, generators, steam-based, gas-based. We have set up the world's largest grassroots refinery in the world. The Reliance people have done that. We have the third largest railway network in the world. So there is no need to be very despondent, no need to be very frustrated about what's happening. Yes, all economic cycles go through these ups and downs. And coming back, we have a huge potential for growth. The flip side is that even with this phenomenal increase in our economic wealth, one of the major things is still our per capita income is one of the lowest. I think we rank almost 100 to 110 among the per capita income. So there needs to be, yes, and per capita consumption of energy is again one of the lowest in the world. So there is a huge potential for growth. We have potential for, our power generation today is approximately 220,000 megawatt. That's what we have added in the last 60 years. If we need our country to maintain an economic growth rate of at least 7 to 8%, we need to add another 220,000 megawatt in the next 10 years. So what you have added in the last 60 years, that kind of power generation capacity we have to add in the next 10 years. We have to almost double our oil refining capacity. We have to produce almost 2.5 times what coal we are producing to sustain these kinds of growths. So we have the need, we have the opportunity. Okay, certain policies are not in place, certain other bottlenecks, political decision making, these are the issues which are presently engaging the attention of a lot of people. But then I would say that it's just that we have to go through this kind of cyclic ups and downs, and they will not be very far off when we are back to the growth path. When we are discussing about this kind of growth, so when you talk about volatility or complexity or ambiguity, uncertainty, you have to look at this issue at various levels. These words do not mean the same for all. Look at big companies, like big MNCs, which have presence in a lot of countries, which have diverse markets, diverse product lines. So they are more secure. They have enough mechanisms to mitigate risks in one field with what they can do in the other field. Then you look at the bottom. So what happens to an ordinary small businessman, a small entrepreneur, a small and medium enterprise? So it can impact various, or even as an employee of a company. So the meaning of this is that, yes, there are mechanisms for and the strategy for each company, the way they have to handle the situation. So let's look at the issue. We are talking about presently the kind of uncertainty, volatility what we have. Most of the companies, for example, you take a company like General Electric. General Electric was predominantly an equipment manufacturing company which was concentrating on the power generation almost 100 years back. Then it diversified into G capital, that is financing of the equipment, and all over the world they have developed the market for leasing their assets. Then the G Capital's financial turnovers almost was 3 times their original product mix of steam turbines or gas turbines or generator. Then they have gone into aviation, then they have gone into medical, then they have gone into plastics, then now they have gone into bioinformatics. So the strategy adopted by a company like General Electric, similarly, even the company where I had worked with, Bharat Heavy Electricals, BHL was originally started only as a power equipment manufacturing company. Then we have entered into business of supplying equipment for refineries, petrochemicals, cement plants. Then we have gone into business of space applications, then nuclear power plants. Similarly, company like L&T. L&T was originally only a manufacturer of low tension switchgear. Now, L&T today is a huge, huge engineering company which has presence in turnkey contracts, shipping, then they are into infotech and whatnot. Take another example like ITC. ITC was basically a tobacco company. And you know, like, they, when with so much of social pressure on that, yes, this cannot be a business for growth. Deliberate decision was taken by the ITC management that in about 10 to 15 years time, their portfolio, in their portfolio of businesses, tobacco has to be less than 50%. So today ITC has diversified into hospitality business. ITC has diversified into paper. Now they have started this concept of e-chopple. How do we engage the grassroots farmers? So they are into distribution of lots of products required for agriculture. Look at a simple tobacco company, how they have diversified into activities, and in the process they are able to discharge their social responsibilities also. They have discharged their responsibilities from environmental point of view also. So the point, or another example I could give you is IBM. IBM was basically a hardware manufacturing. Initially they used to make mainframes. Then one fine morning they said that the personal computer, which let me tell you, I am not sure whether some of you are having the idea of the kind of term. IBM 370 was one of the biggest IBM mainframe computers in 70s. And IIT Madras was one of the first to get in our country. That was the most powerful computer in, I think 74 or 75, which came. That was the most powerful computer in 75, which occupied almost a room like this. And it was costing approximately around 3 to 4 crores those days. The same computing power today is available even less than this desk, small, at a cost of maybe 3 to 4 lakhs. So from the mainframe, with all the kinds of advances which have taken place in the IT hardware, and that kind of computing power is available on a desktop. And they have realized that had they enjoyed the brand name of IBM for almost 4 or 5 years, that IBM PC, IBM compatible PC, that kind of business, they had literally then, they had to sell their business to Lenovo. Today, they have adapted themselves from a mainframe company to the personal computer business. Today they are the services company. They have nothing to do with hardware now. They are the world's biggest IT services company. IBM could have been dead. It would have been buried long time back. But they just felt we are not going to give up. So they cannot believe, nobody, maybe younger generation cannot believe that today IBM is #1 services company. Their color has totally changed from pure hardware to the services arena. So the point I am trying to make is that large companies need to have diversification as a major strategy. So diversification in terms of products, in terms of services, in terms of customers, in terms of supply chain, diversification can be the most important strategy for any company. And it can be at individual level also. It can be at a small enterprise level also. So you need to develop that diversity in you, that your skills can be useful to an IT industry, your skills can be useful to an engineering industry, your skills can be used to a logistics company, whatever it is. So diversification or diversity is one of the major strategies which are adopted by the companies across to face this kind of. Second is that, yes, the changing technology. Technology, like what people say, is the only constant thing in technology is change. Technology. The question is that whether the technology changes. Sometimes some technologies live for 10 years, 5 years. But there are industries now where technology changes every 6 months. And those changes in technology, they have an impact on the other industries. So how good is your industry in the quick absorption of the technology? BHEL has undergone the same kind of, we had to adopt to the new technologies almost every 3 years in terms of more efficient turbines, more efficient compressors, more efficient pumps, in terms of sealing systems, in terms of castings, forgings, what we have made. So number 2 things is that technology change. It is now the speed. As I mentioned, there are industries where you have technology which changes 10 years, but there are industries where technology is changing almost every 6 months. So your insurance for this kind of thing, how fast you can adapt yourself to these technology changes. Sometimes you are the absorber of technology, and sometimes you have to be the developer of the technology. So in either role you have to play. Your adaptation, your capability to adapt yourself, that is an important thing. And as people say, like you've seen the movie Jurassic Park, it is not the strongest which survives. It is the one which has the more adaptability. Dinosaur has just vanished. Even though, I think if you look at the movie, you see the big creatures. The more adaptive you are, more than the strength, what is required is adaptability. So I only mentioned about the technology adaptation required. So adaptation is the second most thing which can help you to come over this. So one is diversification. Second is your adaptive ability to absorb or develop the new technologies. Third is your ability to learn, unlearn, and relearn. And when I mention these things, they are not necessarily at individual level. Companies also have to learn. Companies also have to unlearn, and companies also have to relearn. The same is true at individual level also. Today, the company which spends enough energy, enough expenditure, enough allocation in terms of money on the training and development, so your investments in learning, your investments in skill development, that will become a very big insurance for you to adapt to this new world, new reality. So typically a company like Toshiba, Toshiba spends almost 10% of our annual sales turnover on training and development. The average for any Indian company does not cross more than 1.5%. So training and development, that training and development also include development of new skills, reskilling. So you need to invest in this. That is a big investment for any company to face this new world. Next, of course, research and development. As I said, typical Japanese companies, they spend almost 10% of their annual sales turnover on Indian companies approximately spend about 1.5% of their sales. So here, unless you constantly invest in new manufacturing technologies, new process technologies, you will not be able to survive in this new world or new reality. Okay. I have in my mind is your competitiveness, and let me make one thing very clear. Normally people think that competitiveness is more to do with only from the customer perspective point of view. Competitiveness goes much beyond that. Today, in this world, people compete not only for customers, companies compete for customers, compete for technologies, companies compete for people, human resources. And so this competitiveness has to be understood. Are you competitive in ensuring that you get the right human resources? Just not look at the customer side. Your company's capability to face the new world, new reality. And there is a subtle difference between cost competitiveness and value competitiveness. Unfortunately, in Indian context, everybody thinks that we have to reduce the cost of a product or service. But unfortunately, the global standards do not, cost does not really impact the customer. Customer looks at it from the value he gets for what he spends. So please do not look at cost competitiveness. Please look at the value competitiveness. What your company offers for your product, the value the product gives, the service, the value of the service what you give. That's more important. Gone are the days when, oh, I can go to, I don't know, which China market or Burma market, get cheap goods. No. Even Indian consumer today is willing to spend more money for what he buys, but he wants value for that. So in this new world and reality, value competitiveness is more important than cost competitiveness. Another important factor is that we have to stop thinking that India is the only market. Just before I came to this hall, I was interacting with some of your colleagues that look at the way India has progressed and China has progressed. We were almost at the same level of what should I say, industrialization in the early 80s. And especially from late 80s till now, China has almost clocked 9 to 10% economic growth. They just thought of only global scales. If Indian company thought, let me make 1 lakh cars, they thought we should make maybe 3 million cars, 5 million cars. If we thought that we will make 10,000 tons of forgings, they thought 2 lakh tons of forgings. Sheer global scales. And nobody assured them, yes, we'll buy the cars from you, we'll buy the castings from you, we'll buy the forgings from you. They just thought of only global scales. Yes, they made the investments, they have introduced the latest automated technologies, and they have proved themselves for those volumes in terms of cost competitiveness. Today, they have become the manufacturing hub for the whole world. In India, we are just still bogged down, yes. Yeah, we are looking at very, very small scales of our manufacturing capacities. It just does not take us anywhere. Of course, it's not very fair comparing. China is a communist country. They were really, really supported by government in building huge scales of manufacturing capacity. We do have our constraints in terms of entrepreneurs taking risks. We have to find some methods. But these small scales of our capacities are not the supporting factors for the new world and new reality. Just you have to think global. That's the only way you can survive in this. The last and of course the most important thing in this new world and new reality is that the level of digitization, the level of computerization, the level of connectivity of our business processes. Today, the most important index for any global business is how much the business is digitized, how much it is connected, how much of it is possible to be linked to kind of mobile commerce or e-commerce or whatever it is. Because the factors are simply multiplying in those things. And I think India does not rank very high in these kinds of things. And this need not necessarily be very, very big products or something. The potential is huge, mind-boggling. Today, I understand millions of applications. The revenue streams can be mind-boggling. It can be much more than our total GDP. That kind of potential exists. So, how do you ensure that your businesses are sufficiently digitized and connected to the world, networked to the world? Of course, we talked about the investments required in the innovation in terms of products, processes. And I would like to make one thing very clear. Let us not imagine that innovation has to be very big. Innovation need not necessarily be linked to getting Nobel Prize. Small innovations. Japan has today come to the stage of this level of industrialization not because of major innovations. They had copied more. They don't have many Nobel laureates, but they simply thrived in small innovations. And innovations were at the bottom level. The lowest person in Japan was involved in the innovation process. They have what is called quality circles and small group activities, and so whatever Prahlad talked about, bottom of the pyramid. Innovation at the bottom level. That propelled the Japanese economy, and that it made them into one of the best. Okay, they are not great innovators in terms of new products or new services, but manufacturing excellence, whatever they have achieved, is purely because of innovation at the bottom level. So, I'm not saying that, as I mentioned already, there are no very simple policy prescriptions for the kind of new world, new reality what you're talking about. So you need to have diversification, you need to have a quick technology absorption, you have to be very adaptive, learning, unlearning, and relearning, and think of global standards, global skills, and value competitiveness and digitization, what I have mentioned. But one big thing is that all this thing needs to be factored into the world as a whole is going towards what's called a sustainable development model. That's definitely, there's not going to be any uncertainty about it. There is not going to be any ambiguity about it. So, the country as a whole, each business, whether it is big or small, are we linked, are we forming our business plans as part of a sustainable development model? I'm not very sure whether you have had some exposure in your MBA program. Sustainable development basically is, it's like, they call it a triple bottom line approach. The enterprise's success is not measured purely in terms of economic performance or financial performance. Equal emphasis is on the financial performance or economic dimension. Then second is environmental dimension, and third is the social dimension. So, since the whole world is moving towards a sustainable development model. Emphasis is today on making the country, making each enterprise align itself to sustainable development model. So you have to look at the financial performance, the environmental performance, and your social performance. Equal weightage has to be given. If you can maintain, align this, definitely yes. And I'm again re-emphasizing the point that sustainable development model will not change. There will not be any ambiguity about this, any uncertainty about this. So everybody has to understand this concept and move towards it. I just give a couple of examples. Shell, which is basically a energy, oil and gas company, they know that their growth will not be dependent only on more and more exploration of oil and gas. Today, they are saying that in the next 20 years, they have to generate 20 to 25% of their sales from solar energy. Shell has nothing to do with solar energy, but then they know that in terms of this triple bottom line approach, if they have to survive in the coming years, they need to align themselves to sustainable development. So, as an energy company, they have decided that yes, we will ensure that 20% of our sales, our revenue has to come from renewable sources, and they have zeroed in on the solar energy. So many companies are now trying to make strategies which can align themselves to sustainable development. Just I want to spend a couple of minutes on the sustainable development model. What everybody, you know, the global population is increasing, and there are higher expectations of the quality of life, higher expectations of the standards of life. So, but unfortunately, our planet has very limited resources. So everybody wants to have more and more physical conveniences, physical assets. So how does this? So unfortunately, today a situation has come where the demands of the humanity as a whole is that they have what is called an index called ecological footprint. Today, we are drawing from Earth's resources almost 1.3 to 1.4 times more than its capacity to renew. You should limit yourself to what Earth can renew. Major resources is mainly the land and water. If, of course, land will support the greenery. So if the ecological footprint, if you are not able to be within the limits, then the environmental will collapse. Once environmental collapse, the social infrastructure collapses, and there cannot be any enterprise which can survive in this kind of thing. So everybody, all corporates, starting with government, corporates, individuals, have to align themselves to ensuring that we are committed to the sustainable development model, where we ensure that we do not harm. Our Gandhiji had told that the earth has enough to meet the needs of the humans, but not the greed of the human beings. So the world, the earth has been designed to give sufficient for everybody, but if you are greedy, and then if you are going to draw more than what's its capacity to renew itself, as I mentioned, there will be total collapse of ecological resources, and if ecological resources collapse, social infrastructure collapses, and there cannot be any survival for the enterprise. So let me so I have I think now discussed about some basic strategies of how corporates can have planning to ensure that they can face this new world and new reality. And as I mentioned that the way forward is a model for sustainable development, and the country level, enterprise level, individual level, all of us need to align ourselves to the sustainable development model. And I would like to just spend maybe a couple of minutes on what kind of objectives you people should have. Um, a typical Indian manager, what is the perception in the global market? A typical Indian manager is considered to be extremely intelligent, very good IQ, very quick grasp. But he is perceived, I am again, perception is more important perhaps than the reality. The perceptions are there. We lack in conceptual depth. There is more emphasis on know how, but less emphasis on know why. And Indian manager is unfortunately perceived to be very less friendly to quality, precision, reliability, aesthetics. We are perceived to be very, very poor. We have poor adherence to quality, precision, reliability, and aesthetics. But these are very, very important factors when we are talking about, yes, India is not the only market. We have to think of global market. These factors matter. These are the real things which can add to the value of your product. May be extremely good technically, but if it doesn't score on these parameters, the value of the product just goes maybe 1/3. So we need to give a lot of importance to these aspects: quality, precision, reliability, aesthetics. Another important thing is project management. Timelines. So like what they say, Indian Railways, of course I shouldn't, Indian Railways are extremely good with all that the delays what we have. But time, whatever time we people commit for any project, that even the date has to be maintained. Of course, there are constraints in terms of support systems, constraint in terms of the supply chain management, constraint in terms of infrastructure, yes. But all these things have to be factored into whatever commitments we make. So project management is obviously very, very important. So if we can improve on these things, definitely the Indian manager will definitely be ranking very, very high among the managerial circles in the world. And he adds that much value to the world as a whole. And another important thing I would like to, just like what I talked to you regarding the importance of adaptability for a company, adaptability as an individual is equally important. Again, like corporates, adaptability or ability to learn, unlearn, and relearn. Acquiring new skills. Actually, as I said, when I started my BTech, computer was not heard of. Now we have come to a stage where without the computer nothing happens. So maybe you will see much more such complexities in your, because the technology change is much faster going to be in your innings. So you should be able to acquire new skills at very, very, very short periods. So your ability to acquire the new skills, very important. Professionalism. So please, again, appreciate certain basic things: ethics, fairness, integrity. These are very important things, and they go. Maybe in short term, somebody may try to just take a slightly shorter route, but it is not going to pay in the long run. At this stage, you please give enough importance to ethics, fairness, and integrity. Even if it makes a life a little bit more difficult, your path a little bit more longer. It may take you to your destination, it may take a little bit more time, but these things will pay you in the long run. And last thing, most important thing I told you is that please develop some concern for environment, some concern for the society around you. The fruits of development are not getting passed on equally to all sections. So how do we ensure in your individual capacity or in your organization that the benefit of this development goes to all sections to whatever extent possible? If we do not take care of this, the impact of this imbalance can hit you indirectly in personally, socially, professionally, economy as a whole. If you as managers keep this concern for environment and society, definitely it goes a long way. I only want to end my interaction with you. Sony Corporation, Japan, their chief, he used to have one small message on his table. We make people before we make products. So he gives so much importance that yes, good people can make a good product. So my message to LIBA is that make good managers with a human face, with a zeal for sustainable development, and I am sure you will be the flag bearers of LIBA wherever you go, and you contribute a lot to Indian economy, global economy.